Huskies are in first place in the Big East Conference, and they have found a home.
UConn, in an amazing turnaround, captures the Big East tournament. Let the celebration begin.
The University of Connecticut is coming back to its original home and will once again be a Big East school. The opportunity to add a member who's a national basketball brand that's in our geographic footprint, who has an outstanding fan base with proven support of our biggest annual event, and who brings the added bonus of having a deeply etched, shared history with us and intense rivalries with many of our schools. On behalf of our presidents, welcome back to the Big East Conference.
Allen with Iverson on him, throws one up. Unbelievable!
Another chance for the Huskies.
They have a timeout. They don't use it for the win. Buckets!
You know, he's a leader. He knows what it takes to win, and we just feed off that in every game.
Kemba Walker, step back. Walker, Cardigan, Kemba does it again. Cardigan has won the Big East Championship.
We won the Big East Championship on our home court, our last regular season game, and it's just unbelievable. Look at all these people. Look at all. This is great.
The UConn Huskies have won a fifth consecutive Big East tournament title.
UConn Athletics is so proud to once again be part of the Big East Conference. It feels good to be home.
Hello, UConn Nation, and thank you for joining us this evening as we finally celebrate being home in the Big East Conference. Today marks the first day of our return to the Big East, and what better way than to sit down with Dan and Geno and celebrate the 2020 virtual UConn Head Coaches Roadshow presented by Lewis Real Estate. Tonight we're going to talk about all things basketball. Future scheduling, returning to the conference, what that looks like, what that means to our coaches, the college landscape, and we're also going to answer questions from you, the fans. Before we get started, we have a special message from Val Ackerman, the commissioner of the Big East, who was instrumental in our return home. Val?
Thank you very much, David. Well, this day is finally here, July 1, 2020, truly a red letter day in Big East history. And on behalf of everybody associated with our conference, I wanted to offer an enthusiastic welcome and welcome back to you, your staff, your coaches, your student athletes, and everybody associated with UConn Nation. I want to thank you personally, Dave, for everything that you've done, all your efforts in making this day possible. I'll always remember all of our meetings and our phone calls that brought us to this point. I know I speak for a lot of people when I say we're very sorry that your return is happening under such fraught circumstances for our world and our country, but I know that brighter days are ahead for all of us. And when those brighter days come back, we know we're going to have many, many exciting and magical moments to look forward to in our great league with UConn helping us lead the way. So good luck with everything at your end. We very much look forward to seeing you actually, not just seeing you virtually, very, very soon. And until then, go Huskies and go Big East.
Val, thank you very much for that message and welcoming us back to the Big East. We look forward to working with you, your staff, and the rest of the membership for our inaugural season back in the Big East. Geno and Dan, I don't think our fans could be any more excited about the return home to the Big East. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you about the abrupt ending to the 2020 basketball season and how you and your team dealt with that. Geno?
Yeah, it certainly was a time when we had so much excitement about getting into the NCAA tournament, to continue playing because we were playing our best basketball, you know, and our freshmen had never played in the NCAA tournament, and our seniors was going to be their last time. So when it happened, it was a shock because a lot of times things happen gradually, you know. This was just so sudden, and it hit everybody really hard. And the fact that we probably didn't get a chance to spend time with our team like we like to have done just made it even more difficult. So everyone left feeling not only disappointed, but unfulfilled, you know? Like there was just a big gaping hole in how some kids' careers ended. And for that, you know, I know it was really hard for us. It was hard for the players. It really was.
Dan, unlike the women's team and Geno, who got to finish their conference tournament, we were in Dallas. We were getting ready to play in the conference tournament. So a little bit different, but how did it impact you and your team?
Yeah, I mean, it was, that was a surreal day in Fort Worth. You know, the information was coming in, you know, so quickly. You know, in other sports, in other conference tournaments, you know, you felt like you spent as much time in preparation for the game you thought you were going to play as you did scrolling on social media to find out, you know, if you were going to play, and just how serious, you know, this COVID was going to be. So surreal in that way, and for us, you know, we finally had some momentum. You know, the first year and a half, you know, that we were here together, you know, it was a really tough time. You know, some frustrating moments, losses, you know, difficult challenges, and getting to learning how to win again, and you know, winning our last 5 games and playing as good as anyone in the conference going into that tournament. You know, all that momentum we had, you know, just you know, dissipated, and just getting robbed of an opportunity to you know, have that last game together. You know, with Christian Vital and Al Tariq as seniors, you know, I think that last great fight together before your season ends is for me one of the great memories of each season. You know, the emotion in the locker room, and to get robbed of that for me, you know, just something I'll always remember.
Yeah, so before we move on to 2020-21 and next year's team, we obviously covered the disappointment of how the season ended, but talk just a little bit about 2020 from the beginning to the end, and how proud you were of your team this past year, Coach.
It's about winning championships. It's trying to put yourself in that final group of teams that compete for the national championship. But when you start the season, you're not quite sure, like, do we really possess the qualities that championship teams have? And you're trying to find that out. And, you know, through the whole season, we had some moments where we looked like a championship team, and we acted like one, and we carried ourselves like one. And there were some moments that were uncharacteristic for us, but normal for most people, where we didn't look like a championship team. We didn't look like a team that was going to advance very far in the NCAA tournament. So when you look back in total, I would say that, you know, by Connecticut standards, it wasn't the kind of season that, as somebody said, you know, we're used to having so much success at Connecticut, you know, so like 29-3, whatever the hell we were, you know, it's just really cause for alarm here, you know. And so it's one of those things where you come up short of where you want to be, but really it's all about March. So we did everything right to get us ready for March. It just was more of a struggle than it's been. But all in all, you know, our young players really got a lot better. You know, our freshmen really got to play a lot, and now we're looking forward to next year, and everything that we did this year it's going to really show itself in a whole different team that we put on the floor next year.
How enjoyable was that for you as a head coach? Because obviously the last several years were different than that.
Yeah.
So obviously different team, different development throughout the season. Like, you know, what part of that did you enjoy?
Well, it's funny because during a bunch of those years, it became kind of routine, you know, which is not normal. It's unusual for coaches to have the kind of situation we've had for so long, where you go into every game knowing you're going to win. I mean, who does that? I mean, you're going into every game like, I know we're going to win today. And you think, you know, there is another side to this. And it wouldn't be bad, you know, to go back to that, you know, where you're like not quite sure. So there were a lot of games this year where we went into, we're like, I'm not quite sure. And to be honest with you, I want to go back to the old days. I liked it better the other way. So yeah, it was more of a challenge. It was much more, you know, the intensity level at practice, you know, with everything that we did. But it was a noticeable difference, no question. There was a little bit of a, you know, there was still, there was that juice when you walk into the arena, like, you know, all right, we got our work cut out for us tonight, you know, so it felt good.
That's great. Dan, you referenced it a little bit earlier, but how do you measure where the program is at the end of year two? You know, you came in here a couple years ago, you had a very specific plan and how you wanted to go about rebuilding the UConn men's basketball program. Talk about year two. How does that measure up with where you wanted to be?
Yeah, I mean, I've been through, you know, this is my third time going through, you know, a year two, you know, of trying to take a program from, you know, from struggling to, you know, to winning, to good, to great, to hopefully championship level. And, you know, the year was a lot of kind of what I expected. You know, from year one to year two, you know, year one, you know, you're really kind of dysfunctional at times because you're, you know, like your culture's not just, it's just not in place in terms of preparation, in terms of habits, you know, and connectivity of the group. Yeah, but we obviously we were much better that way, and then the, you know, the infusion of talent with you know, with the three freshmen, you know, really gave us a shot in the arm. And you know, I think you know, year two was, you know, we made great strides obviously later in the season when we learned how to, you know, kind of win again. Obviously the excruciating losses are just kind of part of, you know, the rebuilding process when you're again learning to win again, trying to develop confidence as a program, you know, after 3 straight losing seasons. And you know, but by the end of the year, to have a guy like Christian Vital playing as well as, you know, as any player in the conference, and you know, Book Knight, you know, playing as well as any, you know, almost any freshman player in the country, especially guard. You know, we took an important step. It wasn't a huge step, especially at a place like this, with the way that you're judged here, in terms of your credentials at the end of the season. But for where this program was at and where we are now, it was an important step.
Yeah, how enjoyable, and obviously there's ups and downs in seasons, but some of the high points that I can remember, the Charleston tournament, you know, beating Florida on this court here in front of a packed house, and then towards the end of the season in a late run where we put together a lot of wins, but beating Cincinnati at home in a very closely contested game again in front of a packed house. You know, how did those measure up for you as it relates to just enjoying the effort and the commitment of everyone that's got us to this point?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you see the progress, you feel the progress from, you know, winning our fan base over again, you know, earning their respect, becoming a team that, you know, that they had pride in again. You know, obviously, you know, the level of play and success on the court, you know, wasn't very UConn-like in terms of the overall record, but, you know, we've got some like incredibly smart fans, because they've seen such incredible level of basketball, and they're so passionate that, they recognize the growth. And, we showed that we could beat the best teams in our conference. We were able to obviously, have some big wins like the Florida win, and I'd say even, we had so many other chances to even have a better season. We were just, so close to breaking through and even having a better year. And I think, on our side, like the games are, the margins are so small, and if we get a couple possessions better in this off season, we'll be able to, I think, make look more like a UConn team next year.
End of the season happens. Shortly after that, it's school shutting down. Everyone's dispersing. Let's pick it up from there. How difficult has it been managing the change in day-to-day life? As a coach, but in trying to adjust and manage the relationships through a computer screen or on the phone. Talk to us about how challenging that's been.
Well, when it ended, it's right around that time when you, not only but the players that you have on campus that you have a long break there between our conference tournament and the NCAA tournament. So it's a lot of time when you spend kind of stress-free, because you're not really preparing for a game. So you're connecting with your players on a different level. Things are a little bit more relaxed. You're working more on individual stuff, so it's all good. All the practices, all the time you're meeting, whatever time you're watching film, it's all good. There's no talking about, how bad we played last week or the other day, or, oh my God, we don't even know who our opponents are. So it's a really good time. It's like going back to October, and you kind of like have a mini camp. But you also are constantly, and Danny will say this as well, I think, you're working with this year's team, but you're also in the future. Your head's in the future. So I got to do home visits. We got to get out and see kids play. So our own team was taken away from us, and our future players were taken away from us. That we couldn't go out and see high school tournaments. We couldn't go and do a home visit with a kid. So, I think Danny and I think that's what UConn is. We're more of a hands-on connection kind of place. That's the kind of people that we bring in here. So having a Zoom call with a recruit, a virtual visit with a recruit, Zooming with your juniors like we are, a lot on, developing leadership stuff. That's all well and good, but that doesn't equate even a little bit to sitting there in the same room and seeing the emotion and the features of people you're talking to and the impact that you're having, and the impact that they're having on you because of how passionate none of that comes across really. So the hardest part was what we lost. In addition to the games being played, I think what we lost is that human connection that we live on here at UConn. We're not a text and, Twitter, email program. We're a hands-on kind of place, and we lost all that. And now, we think, well, I'll be back April 6th. Maybe, May. And then next thing you know, it's ongoing. And, all of us, we fear that connection that we crave, it starts to get like this, and now we're going to have to work really, really hard to get that back. Not just with our own team, but with the kids we're recruiting for the future.
Dan, so on that, from a recruiting standpoint, you guys had some work to do because you actually went into the off season potentially looking to add some pieces to the team. So it wasn't like, although you were distant, you had all your kids already signed. So talk to us about recruiting and the changes and how you manage that and how you dealt with trying to sign kids and get commitments, and you couldn't go visit with people.
Yeah, that was, the recruiting piece was a real challenge. Because to get in a home with a family and to meet a prospect and, to really, again, like Geno said, to develop a connection, to get a feel for each other, to feel kind of that vibe. That's tough over a screen. And, we were fortunate that, with 2 scholarships and we knew we wanted a transfer, and with Tyrese Martin was, a kid from Allentown that I previously recruited and had a relationship with at Rhode Island, and so we're fortunate that that there was a strong history there, and we kind of really had a good sense of what each other stood for. And then Adama Sanogo, was a kid from Jersey that myself and Kamani both had deep connections at the school, deep connections in Jersey, and he was a young man that that we had laid some groundwork with, which made it which made the class, finishing up the class in 2020 not as tricky, because there was some foundation there. But 2021, to not get a chance to see these guys in April, to not have gotten a chance to get into their homes, to not get the summer evaluation period, like you have a hard time, really figuring out what you want to talk about in your Zoom meeting every 10 days with them. Usually you're talking about how they're playing, things you like, things you don't like, things they can improve upon. That there's not a whole lot that you can learn about them on the screen every 10 days.
How about your guys that were here and that were playing for you this past season? How did they manage the quarantine aspect of the pandemic, and were they able to get out and get in gyms to stretch their legs out and get some balls up? How have they managed it?
Yeah, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but yeah, I mean, it was all just, I think the situations were so different. In some states, the rules and regulations were a little looser, and guys were able to get in and get some skill work in and get some strength work in. And I don't think any of our players had the opportunity to do, any live play, any pickup on any level. I don't even think they've been able to play, 3-on-3. And, and I'd say there's probably like another half of the team has had very, very limited access, maybe shooting in their driveway with a ball, no strength work at all for them. So, incredibly challenging time. I mean, your heart goes out to these kids because, obviously, that they're here for their education and to get their degree and to grow as men. But, they're not getting the opportunity to really, develop and enhance their craft and their career in basketball right now. And we've got a number of young ones in our program, because we're kind of just getting started, that are missing a critical time in their development. A guy like Booknight, who's had so much momentum in his career, is getting robbed of a key part of his development this summer.
I don't want to ask all the questions tonight, so let's take a time out for fan questions presented by Cox Communications.
Hi, Coach. What's your favorite toy when you were a kid?
Hey, thanks, Andrew. Appreciate the question, man. I'd probably say, I don't know the name of it, but that electronic football game where you had kind of the plastic figures and that little kind of like rubber ball, and there was no real rhyme or reason to how that ball moved, but that was, obviously, sports related, some action, and the technology wasn't great back then.
Hey Coach, this is Kelsey from Tolland. I follow you and Paige Becker on Instagram, but I noticed that Paige is beating you on her followers. So my question for you is, how do you plan on catching up to her?
If you're trying to get on my good side to get tickets, that's not a really good question to ask. Trust me, my goal is not to catch Paige Becker's. I think she's got like 500,000, something like that. That's not my goal. I won't be on there enough to catch her. But the interesting part about it is, I think when she starts practice with us, the furthest thing from her mind is going to be how many Instagram followers she has. Trust me on that.
Hi, Coach. Who's your favorite basketball player?
Hey, William, man, thanks for the question. Well, my brother and my dad, they were like diehard Boston Celtic fans growing up. And, the Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, Danny Ainge, those great Celtic teams, obviously had tremendous success. And I was always diehard New York Knicks team. And my favorite player growing up was Bernard King. New York City legend. And, he used to give the Celtics buckets. I mean, he used to bust Larry Bird and Kevin McHale's you-know-what. So, we didn't get many W's versus those guys, but he put up numbers, and that was my guy.
Hey coaches, this is Tyler from New York City. I was wondering if you guys have any game day superstitions or rituals that you use, either now as coaches or previously when you played. Go Huskies.
Yeah, Tyler, everybody talks about routines and these what do you call those when superstitions, that kind of thing. I was never really big on any of that stuff. When I was playing, one of my pregame and superstitions was I prayed a lot that I would play a lot. So that became like a normal game day activity for me. And sometimes my prayers were answered, sometimes they weren't. And as far as coaching is concerned, it really, I have a routine of how I get to the games and all that stuff, but generally, I just try to be by myself a little bit and try to think about sometimes anything but the game, and until it's time to. I remember, it's funny, I remember one time here in Stores when we were still playing at the old field house, and it snowed like a mother the night before the game. And so we had a night game the next day. And I remember I spent all day sledding with my kids because they were real little at the time. So anything sometimes just to get away from the game, because especially if it's a big game, But other than that, not a whole lot.
Hey, thanks for the question, Tyler. I'm going to be really honest with you. I have so many things, I might not even be able to get to all of them. So M&Ms, right, when I get to the arena, plain M&Ms, and I pick through them because I can't eat an M&M that has the color of the other, of the opponent. All right, so if I'm playing South Florida, I can't have a yellow one or a green one, so I throw those out. I pray right as the players go out for the last time. I do a quick 3-minute prayer. Underwear, listen, if I lose a game and we performed really horrible, those underwear get thrown out that I wore. Socks as well, the dress socks, you'll never see those again. If we lose horribly, the underwear and socks are done. If we play a really good game and we lose maybe an overtime battle, but we perform real well, I may consider keeping the drawers. That's probably all I can share with you.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Aponte, and I am the office manager here at Lewis Real Estate Services. We are honored to be the exclusive real estate company for UConn Athletics and the presenting sponsor of the Coaches Roadshow. How do you instill in your players the ability to stand up for what is right, to act with humility towards others, and the ability to speak out against racial injustice.
You know, so much of what these kids are going through right now is so personal to them. You know, each one of our players that we talk to has a different story that has impacted them, either in their own personal lives, the lives of someone they know, family member or friend. You know, then you throw in what's thrown at them from the media. So it's very personal. And, you know, I think our job as coaches is to appeal to their sense of follow your heart, follow your gut, and trust your instincts. What are you feeling? You know, and be able to act on your feelings. Be intelligent about it, be informed about it, but be passionate about it. And if you are all those things, then you have a responsibility to use your voice. How you use your voice is important. You know, what message you give is important. So we're trying to teach them that it's not just enough to say, you know, I feel this or I think this. You really have to act upon it, express yourself. You know, we're trying to teach them how to be activists. You know, when I was in school, late 60s, you know, early 70s, college kids, man, they were activists. That's how all change occurred. College kids. You know, people think it's adults. It's college kids. College kids who put their lives on the line on college campuses all around the country back then. And I think it's going to be college kids that bring about the change that we're all looking for right now. So they're at the forefront of this, and their voice means a lot right now. And we don't want that opportunity to pass them by.
You know, just for us as coaches and you know, mentors and educators of our men, it's, you know, obviously it's our job to, you know, to have real conversations, you know, to educate ourselves, you know, on the issues that are facing us as Americans in our society, you know, so that when our guys, and then obviously then we've got to empower them. But then, you know, once we've empowered them, you know, to use their platform and their voices, you know, at a place like UConn where your stage and your platform is so large and you can reach so many people, you know, that they've got to be, you know, really truly educated on the issues, you know, so that when they do speak out, where it's going to have the ability to, you know, to influence. You know, I think, you know, as coaches, you know, I've always felt like my greatest responsibility, you know, was to put, you know, the 13 men in my program was, you know, to do the very best job, obviously, that I could do to help them reach their goals in their career as a player. You know, obviously, you know, get their degree and appreciate the value of their education. Then also now, you know, to put these guys in a situation where that their growth as men, you know, and the habits and the person that they become, you know, when they graduate or leave our program from UConn, that they can go back into their communities, you know, and have an impact. You know, because they're successful people, they're well-rounded people. You know, that they're people that can make an impact, you know, because of what they stand for and you know, what they're made of.
Hurley's done a phenomenal job already. He's starting to bring back that culture that existed. You know, remember this, these two programs have 9 national championships between them, and you got 2 fiery coaches, 2 guys who know a little bit about winning. These guys are intense competitors. I think we're gonna have a heck of a game.
Get it started for a little b-ball right now with the Huskies holding the first possession. hustle his way in, and he does. Buries a three.
Hey, we may be seeing a star being born. We may be seeing a star being born.
Over the top, Wilson.
Oh, Wilson up and away. Nice look right there. So people just go and get him. Oh, a Cook. A Cook could be a star. They're going to love a Cook. What a name.
The kick to Polly. Gilbert underneath. Carlton. On the third effort, it goes to tie the game.
I'm not going to let them get away. Mr. Carlton.
Dan, as we just saw our highlights from our team playing in MSG last year, you know, as a former player in the Big East, as someone who's had the opportunity to coach the last 2 years at MSG, talk about how special the Big East tournament is, what it's like to coach at MSG, and just how excited you are about the opportunity of returning to MSG for the Big East tournament next year.
Yeah, I mean, well, world's most famous arena, you know. And Big East tournament, you know, growing up, I remember, you know, probably some of my first memories watching college basketball for me, you know, were Big East tournament games at the Garden, you know, Pearl Washington, you know, and those Syracuse teams, you know, and Patrick Ewing and those Georgetown teams, and you know, then getting, you know, old enough as a kid to, you know, to sneak in there to, you know, to games, you know, in person, you know, at the Garden, where, you know, I'm sure the ACC tournament and the Big Ten is a lot of fun, but there's nothing like the Big East tournament. Having played in it at Seton Hall and having won that championship, you know, one time there, and you know, no better feeling, you know, in my playing career in college. And then as a coach the last couple of years, you know, playing Villanova there, playing Syracuse there, playing Indiana there, you know, the buzz that you get when you walk into that arena, you know, when there's 9 or 10,000 Syracuse fans, and, you know, and 9 or 10,000 UConn fans, or same way with Villanova, that's just different, and it's what makes the Big East special. And it's, you know, it's the best conference basketball tournament in the country, and I don't think it's even close.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't write a better script. The only script that would have been better would have been if the league had never experienced what we experienced with the breakup, you know. But I remember starting in the Big East from like 9 schools, the dreaded 8-9 game, you know. You're not even in the tournament. You have to play to get into the tournament. And how that was goal number 1 when I took the job. We are not playing in the 8-9 game. To growing into probably the best basketball league in the history of basketball, when we had the 16 teams, and I remember counting one time, there was something like 19 or 20 teams from the Big East out of the 32 that were in the NCAA tournament. And when we lost all that, it just felt like, I don't care where we go, it can't possibly match what we have. And not that, you know, it was horrible, because it wasn't. You know, we had great success and all that, but it never felt right. It never felt right. As much as, you know, I respect all those teams that we played, getting on a plane and going to, let's say, Memphis, is not the same as going to Villanova or going to Providence College and going to Seton Hall even, when they were a Sweet 16 team. It just, the intensity wasn't there. You know, the feeling that you had wasn't there. And I never thought, you know, there was a point where I never thought we'd get it back. And then when it started to kind of pick up, you know, and if you remember, you were a big part of it. It started picking up, and then all of a sudden, it's dead. And I thought, there goes. That we had one last shot at it, it's gone. And then, you know, when it came back a little bit, then it was real serious. And now, I remember walking in here almost every other day, because I wanted to watch them put the Big East logo back on the court. And I would come and you see a little bit of it, then 2 days later you see a little bit more of it, and then I would look out my window at Worth, look out there. I can't wait for my players to come back, and I want them to stand there, and I'm gonna take a picture of them and say, this is Connecticut basketball right here.
Yeah, so Dan, I remember during the first time I met you in your home, we were having a conversation, and you asked the question about, you know, the possibility or potential of returning to the Big East. And I had to make a decision on whether I wanted to shoot you straight and what I thought at the moment, or I was trying to recruit you as our basketball coach. And I shot you straight because at the time, you know, I didn't believe that there was a path for us to get back to the Big East. That's obviously changed. Here we are. For you, you know, you don't have the history that Geno does at UConn in the Big East, but you certainly appreciate it. You understand the history here and the context in which what this means to our fans and to our basketball program. But, you know, when it finally sunk in that this is a reality and you're now the head coach at UConn in the Big East, talk to us about that, and then also elaborate on the change and how it's impacted recruiting.
Yeah, it's and it is, you know, true story. You know, Dave, you didn't like wink, wink, hey, you know, just hang in there. We'll eventually be back. You were, you know, I fully, you know, took the job with the expectation that I was going to build a program for the AAC. So, you know, hardest secret I've ever had to keep when we found out, and you know, just that it just changed the whole energy around, just in and around the program. You know, when that announcement hit, you know, the excitement, you know, not only of our fan base, but, you know, like the student fans, you know, the students that, you know, the UConn students who's, you know, their girlfriends and their buddies, they go to Villanova, they go to Georgetown, they go to Providence, you know, they go to Seton Hall. Like, those are their, you know, those are the kind of the kids that went to their high schools that, you know, that attend rival schools that now, you know, we're competing against, and you know, which adds to that element of excitement on campus and us rejoining the conference. So, you know, Big East basketball has always been, you know, if not the premier conference, year in and year out, one of the premier. And from a recruiting standpoint, there's not any more excuses, you know, for kids that don't want to come and play at UConn anymore. Now it would just strictly be that they don't want to play for me. You know, the conference, you can't use, you know, the geography of our league or the stature of our conference against us. You know, right now we're right back where we belong. You know, where UConn has a chance to, you know, to build its profile and the caliber of our program back up to that elite level. Now that we're in, you know, not only a conference that fits us in terms of geography, but it's, you know, it's one of, if not the best basketball conference in the country.
So for both of you, there's going to be some change in scheduling in league. Geno, you're going from a 16-game conference schedule to a 20. Dan, you're going from an 18 to a 20. Obviously, the context of the league and the quality game in and game out is different, but talk to us about the difference and how it's going to impact what you do going from a 16-game conference schedule to a 20-game conference schedule.
Yeah, you know, the non-conference part of our schedule has always been a huge part of our success, you know. And people think, well, you know, you had to play that kind of a schedule non-conference wise because of who was in your conference. We played the same schedule when we were in the old Big East with 9 teams in the top 25. That didn't change because we had the opportunity to play them, because we had a lot of games, and because that's what our fans want. So now 4 of those are gone. So it's a challenge now, because instead of 13, I believe it was, non-conference games, now you're down to 9. You've got contractual obligations with some that you got to extend, and you have to really choose wisely now. Who can we play? Where can we play? So it's much more difficult to put together the same kind of schedule, but who we play is not going to change. Who we play is not going to change. Those teams that you want to see us play, those teams that, you go, oh yeah, well, I'm not going to go to this game or that game, but I'm going to that game. First of all, on the men's side, those days are over. They're like, I'm not going to that game. I'm only going to that game. You decide not to go to that game, you ain't getting into that game. So that's basically the bottom line. Those games, they're never going away. Still going to play Notre Dame, and we're still going to play, Stanford or Baylor and Oregon and South Carolina, and you name it. All those teams, they're not going away. It's just going to be a little more difficult year in and year out to fit them all in.
Dan, how about your team and how you're going to approach 2 more conference games, and obviously the strength of the schedule? I mean, over the past couple of years, you've seen 4 or 5 teams in the Big East consistently in the top 25, if not multiple teams in the top 10. How are you going to approach that?
Yeah, I mean, we're going from, a really good basketball league to, the best basketball conference in the country, and those 20 conference games, home or away, are, they're going to be wars. So for us, obviously our conference schedule is going to put us in, a much better position in terms of building a resume for the NCAA tournament. The beauty of playing in a conference like the Big East is, talk about quad 1 wins or quad 2 wins, and however they come up, with the analytics and how they categorize those games. I really probably no idea, but I just know that when you play in a conference like the one we're going into, you get so many chances to build a resume with quality wins. So there's going to be 20 chances for us in conference play to get, NCAA resume building victories. Non-conference for us, I mean, obviously we want to play in a very appealing, non-conference tournament at MTE. Whether that's Maui, or PK85 or Atlantis. We obviously would want to have a yearly, home and home series that is, that's appealing to our fans in the non-conference. So I could see us probably, don't hold me to this, but I mean, 4 or 5 high-level games in a non-conference is pretty much all you're going to be needing from our side going into what's going to be a bear of 20 conference games in the Big East.
Geno, a lot of great memories in the Big East for you. You had 6 undefeated teams that made their way through a Big East season. Which one was the best?
Well, it depends who's sitting in front of me that I'm talking to. It's like saying, which one of your kids you like the most? My wife said, who are you going to live with? When you get old, she goes, whichever one will take me. And I think the team that in 2002, not just because of what they did, but who they were and what they've done since they left Connecticut. We had Sue, D, Asia, Swin. And we have 4 kids that played on the Olympic team. The year before, we had 5. So that 2001 team and that 2002 team were probably the 2 best teams. It'd be hard to say anybody but those 2 teams. Except when you have Tina, Maya, and Renee, and you have the best center, and you have the best guard, and you have the best player in the country, you probably have the best team ever. So it's hard to be the best team ever at Connecticut. You can be one of the best teams, but it's hard to be the best team ever.
All right, so moving on, let's talk about next year's team.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a ton of fan interest when it comes to recruiting. Talk to our fans about your new players that are going to be joining us next year.
It's unusual because you generally don't have five players coming in your freshman class. You know, we've always said 2 minimum, 4 is, you know, that's good. 5 is a lot, and it's important this year because that's half our team now. So we have 10, and we probably have a walk-on or something. So probably have 11, maybe 12, but 10 and 5 are going to be freshmen. And those 5 freshmen, you know, we have a little bit of everything. You know, we have a guard from Croatia, you know, Nika Mule, who she's playing professional basketball over there. So all this stuff here hasn't affected her one iota. She plays all the time, still playing in their league, you know, doing her thing. And, you know, she's like every other European player you've ever seen, you know. They got a little edge to them, you know, they got a little bit like, I'm older than my years, you know. And then we got another foreign kid from Canada who played on the Canadian national team, Aaliyah Edwards, you know, and she plays at a high level, and she's athletic as all get out, and strong kid, 6'2", you know, and can play a lot of different positions, and that's something we didn't have this year, you know. And we got a 6'5" kid from New Hampshire, Piath Gabriel, who, you know, if she turns out right away to be really good, that's huge. Might take a little bit of time, but anymore, if you want a kid like that, you got to go recruit volleyball players, you know. So there's not many of them, and we got a kid. We got a kid, Mir McLean from Maryland, who I'm going to really be excited to coach her because she's like 5'11", and I think her vertical is probably the highest of anybody ever recorded at Connecticut at any size. I mean, so she plays, you know, like that kind of athlete. And then, you know, the one that everybody talks about, Paige Beckers, is the kind of kid that comes in, and whatever the situation she's in, she'll figure out how to be great in that situation. You know, people think she's going to start and average 30. That ain't going to happen. You know, the expectations level for a kid like that, like they were with Stewie, like they were with Maya Moore, like they were with Diana, they're off the charts, and they almost never come true freshman year, you know. So this kid's coming in with a ton of pressure on her, and yet at the same time, I don't know that there's been a more exciting player to come out of high school in a long, long time.
Coach, how about Avina? I mean, obviously a lot of excitement around Avina last year. She transferred. She didn't wind up getting her waiver, which maybe that was a blessing in disguise because she really had to focus on her knee and getting that right. How is Avina doing?
Yeah, and she was here during that whole shutdown, during her rehab, and she's been cleared to play. So obviously now that brings someone who played already 2 years at a high level and practice with us for half a year. So what we're going to get from her, depending on how it all plays out, is, it's somebody that's playing for you for the first time, but it's a veteran player, which you don't have the opportunity to do that a lot. And the young kids coming back, Anna's going to be in better shape, having been here a year already. Aubrey's probably as athletic as any kid in America. She plays against her brother every day. Sometimes I can't believe some of the stuff she does in practice. And Liv and Kristen, this will be their third year of playing a lot of basketball. And if you talk to both of them, they'll tell you they're really, really disappointed with the way things went for them personally this past year, which is the best thing for a kid to say. They're like, Coach, I'm not happy. I took a step back, and I know what I did that I'm not going to do, and I know what I should have done that I'm going to do, and they're going to be great. So I know, it's part of the deal here. I get that, but not going to be roll it out and win 35 games. That ain't going to happen.
We'll see. Dan, you've got two kids early, you got two kids late, but you also have two kids that were sitting on the bench all year, redshirting for different reasons. But so really, you're bringing in 6 new guys that can play on your team. Talk to us about those 6 members of your team.
Yeah, if I forget any of them, Dave, just because it is a big group. The guys that are sitting out, RJ Cole, transfer from Howard, who's a Jersey guy, played for my dad in high school. And we as a point guard and as an older guy, and a guy that's just played just tons of high-level basketball in his life. Dad's a coach. He's like that, to make that analogy, to like that quarterback that is very precise as a passer and kind of gets that ball out on time. He's really a beautiful player to watch on offense in terms of his efficiency, his creativity as a passer. And I think, obviously, Jalen Gaffney, late in the year had like a really huge impact on us. Our ball movement, our scoring and our efficiency, and even the pace that we were able to play at. And I just think, with RJ and Jalen Gaffney, our point guard play next year is going to be a real strength of what we're doing. Richie Springs, is a versatile front court player that's 6'9", New York City kid who's just got a ton of upside, and I think it may it may take him a little bit longer to reach that his full potential, but you could be looking at a guy that could grow into 6'10", 6'11", and multi-positional front court player, with an ability to face up, and he's really mobile, and he's one of the best offensive rebounders I've ever coached or recruited. Of the kids coming in, and of the 3 high school players, Andre Jackson, he's it was big for us. That was a huge win in recruiting. He's a difference maker, and I think he'll have a similar impact to what Bouknight was able to do and what Cook was able to do at different times before he got hurt, in terms of the splash that he could make on the scene. Not the same type of player as James in terms of like the scoring, but he makes James look like just a good athlete. This guy right here, I don't, there's been some incredible players that have played here, and, but this may be the best pure athlete that's ever taken the floor here on the men's side in terms of speed, quickness, and his ability to play above the rim. It is absolutely freakish, and and his ability as a defender and as a playmaker and a passer, just a creator. Almost in the mold of a Scottie Pippen type of guy. He's got a chance to be one of the best freshmen in the country. Adama Sanogo and Javonte Brown-Ferguson, both inside guys, but in particular Adama, because of his physical strength, and he's got a chance to be a high impact guy from day one. He's an old school warrior and a winner, and a guy that I think is going to have this presence in the paint and be one of the best inside players, a freshman in the country this year. Javonte Brown-Ferguson, Canadian. He's grown to almost 7'1" now. I think when we got the commitment, he was 6'10". We'd actually like him to stop growing right now. So he's about 7'1", about 240. Once we help him with the physical part, the work in the weight room, get that kind of agility and movement caught up to his frame, and like a very, very good skill set. I think he's going to be a 7-foot plus monster for us at some point, and a likely NBA first round type of talent. So I think all three of those guys that we signed this year, not to put too much pressure on them, but they look like the type of guys that would sign on and play at UConn on some of those teams that had Charlie Villanueva, Emeka Okafor, Hilton Armstrong, that had a hard time getting on the court. I think we're finally starting to kind of get that depth on the roster. And then Tyrese Martin, the transfer, who obviously is going to look to get a waiver to get on the court. A third perimeter player, a small ball four-man at 6'6" plus, big time athlete. Being an Allentown, PA kid, he plays with an edge, and he's super athletic, and then he fits. He fits our other guys. Like, he'll fit in well with James and with our point guards, because he can play really, really well without having the ball in his hands. Because he's got a pretty good three-point shooting ability. He's a high-level defender, and he can finish way above the rim. So, it's a lot of guys that we're dying to get on campus so we can kind of put it all together. But the infusion of talent that we brought in from year one to year two was apparent this year, and it showed up in the results. And I think there's another big jump coming our way, because the talent infusion going into year three is going to even be greater.
Hey, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. We certainly look forward to joining the Big East. Coach Hurley, Coach Auriemma, thanks for joining the fans, sharing with them this evening. I certainly want to thank the folks at Lewis Real Estate for presenting our first edition of the 2020 UConn Head Coaches Roadshow. We look forward to seeing you soon.